Welcome to the Blue Dwarf Keeping Children Safe Online. I am Paula, your host. I am a dedicated cybersecurity professional with a passion for OSINT and digital forensics. This podcast is a safe, supportive space where we share real-world tips to help parents, carers, and teachers protect children in today's digital world. No fear, just practical advice and empowering insights to help you feel more confident navigating online safety. Today we are joined by Samitha Srimath Kandale, a high school student from Limburg High in San Jose, California. She's part of a generation growing up fully online and brings an important perspective on what digital safety, identity, and influence look like from inside out. Also, she is the president of Cyber Youth and a non-profit aiming to educate students and their parents on best online security practices. Samita, welcome to the Blue Dwarf. For those meeting you for the first time, could you tell us a little about how you use the internet day to day? What kind of platforms or online spaces feel most familiar to you?
Thank you so much for having me. In my experience, what I've used the most, I'm not much of a gamer, so I'm not really on video games. But what I have used are social media tools like Instagram. I'm also on like the smaller ones that are like as social anymore, like Facebook. I also use a lot of things that people may not consider social media as much, but things like Spotify, and your Gmail, where you still get to express yourself and you still have like a digital footprint. Those are things that I'm most on because they align with what I do. I like to chat with friends on Instagram and I love to listen to music using Spotify. And for my emails, I email a lot of people daily. So those are mainly the platforms that come to mind. But overall, I use most of like the popular ones.
Okay. When you explore online spaces, you just mentioned that you don't play games, but I'm thinking like forums or social media. Do you feel safe? And what makes a space feel trustworthy for you?
There, it's like a yes and no. Yes, I do feel safe in the sense that I am really privileged to have people around me who I can go to in case something goes wrong. I also know what to do in case something goes wrong. But at the same time, especially using like Gmail or LinkedIn or even having a phone, there are a lot of scams that I do get attacked with. A lot of like, click this link and win whatever, or hey, your bank needs your information. There are some that pop up even when I'm on websites for schoolwork where I'm listening to a podcast or I'm reading an article and there are like scams that just pop up. And oftentimes my guard is down, and that's honestly when I'm the most scared. When, I trust this website because my school has given it to me, and something pops up on there. That's often the time where I'm a bit worried. But what makes a space trustworthy for me is when there are a lot of things that don't give away your information. For example, your username, it can be whatever, or maybe they choose a username for you. So there's no reason you have to put your name on it. Or there's like very minimal interaction with other people. For example, if I do play a video game with someone one day, I would hope that I don't have to give too much personal information just to play the game. Or, my username, I don't have to put my name or I don't have to include anything on it. I want it to be protected by the game and not just by me. Obviously, I've been involved in a lot more of cyber safety, but thinking about other people, I would hope that all of these platforms implement things like that where you have no choice. Like you are not allowed to give out your personal information, especially like you said, forums like on, for example, Reddit, if you want to give out some opinions about or like some facts or some ideas, whatever it may be. I really hope that those sites ensure that, there's safety precautions in place. Um, and I also make sure that, I'm only going to good sites and I'm making sure I'm double and triple checking that it has a reputation that I can trust. So yeah.
That was an amazing answer. You mentioned a few things, but one really stood out to me. You said you are spam with a lot of email. How do you recognize uh, a phishing link, for example, or what makes you feel, oh, this might be a trap?
Hmm. Um, I think because I'm not really involved in a lot of things, like I don't have my I don't have bank details. That's all on my parents. So there's never that worry of like, oh, what if my credit card has been stolen if that's like a link that I get. So oftentimes that I can completely get rid of those scams that do pop up. And in general, I don't give out my information on a lot of platforms, or when I do, I don't use my main email, the personal email that I check every day that I have a lot of connections with people on. I have another email for getting newsletters or things that I sign up for, so that if something, is a little bit more on the sketchy side, I don't have all my personal information on it, and it's more of like a spam email where I put either for when I buy clothes, they'll send all the sales. I'll put that in a separate place. And that oftentimes helps me avoid many of the spam links. But in general, when I look at a link that does come to me, um, even if it looks like reputable at a first glance, many things that I like to check out for are like the pictures on it. Does it look like a real logo? Because obviously many logos are copyrighted, so sometimes they'll add a little bit of altercations to the logo that you may not just see at a first glance. And the spelling of things, if they spell Google with an extra O, then I know that maybe that's not actual Google telling me that something's gone wrong. Um, and I would say the last thing is just not trusting everything. Even if I see something that could be like, oh, last chance to get something, I think I've learned to not get caught up in that flow of like always going and always clicking really fast and just pausing for a second. And that oftentimes allows me to avoid many of those links, because I actually pause and I see, where is this going to take me? Do I need to even go there? And is it worth it? At the end of the day, even if it looks very reputable, is it worth it if I click this? There are consequences. And is this like, this is mandatory? Like, I need to click this link to log into a new platform? Or is it like, I need to click this link to win something? Do I really need that? Is that really applicable to my life at all? No, it's not important to me. So I would just stop and think for a while, and that allows me to miss a lot of scams and stay safe.
Thank you. Coming back to social media, do you feel social media like a popularity contest, or and or how do you navigate this pressure to be visible or gain followers, especially when strangers started to show up in your messages?
That's a really good question and extremely so applicable today. I used to feel like I needed to get those likes, and I would constantly check, like, oh, I posted a story, what has happened to it? Who's liked it, who hasn't liked it? But, and to be honest, I don't remember when that switch happened. But at some point, I started to think of like, is this really worth it? Is it really worth it to be checking? Because sometimes I would feel sad, like, oh, my friends didn't like it. And I would start to, have like more negative thoughts about it. But at the end of the day, it's just somebody clicking a button. It's nothing more than that. And oftentimes we put too much of a value on that person clicking a button. And I think that often affects people's mindset. And for me, I've started to, engage more. Actually having conversations are more meaningful than the amount of likes or the amount of views that I get. Because at the end of the day, when someone, texts me and says, "Hey, you looked cute in the picture," or "Hey, you're glowing," like all of those words that they say to me, my friends, um, mean so much more than them clicking the button or some stranger clicking a button. I really don't care about that. And so that has fixed how I view my friends, my relationship with my friends. And also, I've stopped posting as much. I limited what I post, and I really make sure, do I want to put this out there? Because I'm not striving for those likes anymore. I'm mostly posting for myself. And creating that mindset for me has allowed me to feel like it's not a popular contest. It's more of a place for me to express myself and how do I want to express myself. So I've kind of shifted my perspective on how I view the platform and how I use it, and that's helped me realize what is actually worth it and what isn't.
Wow. I will not ask you when, but I will ask you what made you switch from one way of thinking about platform and the way you're thinking now about the platform.
I think what made me switch was this idea of like what is real and what is fake, and
Okay.
kind of also socially, you have sometimes you have friends where you're just on good terms. It's not a deep connection. You wave to each other, or when it's their birthday, you'll say happy birthday, but they're not somebody you would go to if something, sad happened in your life or if you needed extra comfort. Um, and I kind of realized what my friendships were like. And I think that translated into social media, into the sense of what is really worth it? How much does this actually mean? What is real and what isn't that significant anymore? For example, like in the terms of the likes, if someone puts a like on my picture, does it really mean that they're like showing love and, appreciation for me? Or are they just clicking a button on their screen, and kind of getting that reality check of, there's some friends who are just out there, who you are on good standing. You say happy birthday, you say hi, all of those good things. But it's not deeper than that. And that's okay. We all have friends like that. And we also have friends who mean a lot to us, and we go out of our way to meet them. And we go out of our way to make sure that they are happy. And that is more meaningful. And I started to look at social media that way after seeing that shift in my friendships. And I started to view social media as, is it really a meaningful relationship? Like, are those likes and are those views, do they really mean a lot to me? And the answer was no. The messages I got from my friends, using it more as a way to socialize rather than a way to get like attention and again, kind of win this popularity contest within myself, it wasn't worth it anymore. So I think like it, ironically, the physical switch that I had affected my online presence as well.
That's an incredible answer. Um, just a side story. Outside it's pouring, so if you hear the drops, I'm really sorry. I just decided to open the sky. Coming back to you, you touch up on a very interesting thing that I had a question in mind for that messaging. You said when friends messaged you. I think friends messaging you is kind of expecting. But what do you do when somebody messages you out of nowhere, saying compliments or making promises of different kind of opportunities? What's your gut reaction? Has that ever happened before to you?
I've gotten a lot of those messages, specifically on LinkedIn, for like, oh, increase your salary by 100K right now.
Ah,
Just click this link and sign up. And ironically, I'm a kid. I don't even earn anything, so I don't know. It's really funny to see some of those. Um, and I also get messages on Instagram sometimes. But for that, I usually just private my account. So whoever follows me, I have to look at them. Do I know this person? Do I have, mutual followers with them? And do I really need this follower? Again, like not putting a worth on that number has allowed me to maintain a group where I am like I know who's my audience. Whereas if it's public, anyone and everyone can follow you. And I guess it's okay if you don't post that much. I guess like maybe there's like a different reason to have it public. Um, but I think that if you do keep it public, there's that chance of getting a DM from someone. And like you said, it can be as if it's like a diamond, but in reality, it's fake. Like it's just plastic. And what I do is usually just block the person and report them. And sometimes friends send me a screenshot and they're like, oh, this person sent me a request or they sent me like a DM. And I usually tell them the same. Just report them, block them, do not engage, don't like give them what they would like, which is a response. Um, and just go about your life. Don't put too much thought on it. And I think that's something that people sometimes get a little bit scared of. Like, what if this person is real? What if this person has like genuine intentions? But at the end of the day, I think protecting yourself is so much more important. And by not engaging with them, you're setting a clear boundary and you're not allowing anything to happen. And so that's why if anyone DMs me with anything, job offer or telling me like, oh, I like this picture of you, I just block them and report them because that just sets my personal boundary and that keeps me safe. And that's my number one priority when I'm online.
Very interesting and very mature from your side. Um, Before we actually go into boundaries, because I have a set of questions about that, I would like to ask you um, some of the popular terms, let's say lately. It's sugar daddy, grooming, or side hustle. Does are these things? Let me phrase this in English. Um, are these things that you or your peers recognize or talk about?
I have definitely, luckily I haven't seen anything like that. But I do know friends who have seen stuff like that pop up. And most of the time, it's really nice to hear this, but most teens are very aware, especially like in the
Okay.
group that I've been, that, not these are not safe, they're not real, they're false promises, it's not to be engaged with. And most of the times it's something you laugh off and you're kind of just like, oh, whatever, like, and just block it and you don't pay too much attention to it. But there are definitely times where it's a little bit more serious than that. And I think especially in cyber for youth, if anything like does happen, our team members know like it's not just a matter of blocking the person. It's also an emotional response to something that could, happen. No matter what message you get, no matter if you talk to them or not, um, seeing those messages can invoke an emotional response that maybe be scared or maybe, you're sad, you're angry. And as teens, I think what we're doing is just supporting each other if that happens. And I think since we all have kind of grown up online, we kind of know how it feels and we're able to empathize more. And we're able to understand how things online can evoke such an emotional response, even if nothing happens, even if it's just a couple of messages from somebody, which, people say like, oh, just block it. If you're being cyberbullied, just block it. Or if you're getting ads, block them, report them, and that's all. But, more and more people are understanding that there's another side to it. And to deal with that, we need to support each other and we need to be emotionally available for each other and not judge. And I think that's kind of how it's been flowing right now. I've seen more people be more open about their experiences, and that just helps more and more teens. And in general, not just teens, more people get awareness about how much it can affect you to get messages like this, even if, nothing happens. Yeah.
Okay. It's very good to hear that, especially young children, they support each other, and that's very important because I think as a child, or at least I'm thinking back at my childhood, um, I had a very open conversation with my mom, and we
Mhm.
had a close connection. We bonded over little things, but not everyone I knew at my age um, were in the same relationship with their parents. So going through to someone who you trust and open up, that's a very important thing, because you were focusing on youth, which is normal. I have a question for you. Feel free not to answer if you're not comfortable with the question. um, what do you think that parents are as up to date with the terms that I just mentioned, as the youth are?
Mm, I think it depends from like family to family, but in general, the trend is that, the older generation isn't as aware of like
Mm-hmm.
how it can affect you. I think many people are aware of what can happen online, but the result of the messages, or even the result of seeing things that, may be just minor in someone's eyes, can be a huge like meltdown for someone else, because they are on the receiving end. And I think that's kind of where the issue lies overall, where I think parents are aware. I feel that parents know that, bad things happen on the internet, but maybe not so much aware on how much it can affect a person and how often it happens, and maybe how to support somebody going through that, because it is so different, and it is so new. And I think most parents have not grown up using the internet, and oftentimes don't have experience to back up their parenting, because most parenting is based on what you've experienced, what you've seen in your life, either things you want to implement or things you want to take out. But it's based on what you've experienced in your life and what you've seen as you've grown up. And most parents have not seen the internet and experienced it. And that often makes it hard to empathize completely. And it kind of creates a gap within like that relationship between kids or youth in general and their parents, or even parents figuring out how the internet works. That's why the older generation falls for more scams, compared to teens who are a little more aware of these tactics now. And it's just because I think it's just a lack of awareness on how the online world works. And I wouldn't completely blame any parents. It is really difficult. It's like learning a new language and joining a different world. And that can be very overwhelming. And I think at the end of the day, it's just trying, and that itself is 100 times better than anything else, even if you don't completely understand. Just putting your foot out there and just saying, like, I'm here, even if you don't understand, that does so much for the youth. And just knowing that their parents are there, even if it may be hard to describe, they're there for them. That's like the most important step, because it is very difficult, I would understand, to get a hold of the concept of the online world because it is so vast.
Thank you for your answer. Um, you've touched on boundaries, and I would like to go back to that. Online danger doesn't always show up in obvious way. It can look like a friend, a fan, or somebody just trying to be nice. Sometimes less, sometimes really, really hard. So my question for you is, sometimes manipulation online doesn't look dangerous at first. It can seem friendly and even helpful. What do you think it makes it hard to spot?
I think this is more into like the mental aspects, but the need to get validation and the psychological need to get the approval of others. And in response, that kind of backfires. I do think that, it's great to, want other people to like you. That means, you are trying, you're putting out your gratitude, and you're helping other people out, and it creates empathy. Um, but in the online world where you're unable to get a full idea of who the person you are talking to, it can prove to be very dangerous. And I think that since even I do it all the time, people want the approval of others, they will often overlook some red flags and they will, let it go because they do not want to hurt the other person, even though that other person either does not have good intentions or may not even be real. It could be a scam. It could be like an AI chatbot the person is talking to. There's so many new things that are coming up that could prove to be dangerous and manipulative, and it really stems to the validation that people seek so much and how we're unable to get a idea and a good picture of who we're talking to. Because if you were to talk about this in person, a sketchy person trying to come up to you and ask like, "Oh, let's be friends," or like, "Oh, I'm really nice." You have that internal instinct to not trust them, but you're able to base it off of the fact that, they are somebody you don't know, or, they look very sketchy, or they've been following you for a while and they just came up to you. All of those things give you hints. But in the online world, all of those go away. People can make either fake personas, or they don't even need to show themselves online. They can just have no profile picture. They can make up so many elements to it. So we're unable to get a diagnosis on who this person really is and if they're safe or not. And that mixed with the need for validation and to be nice to everyone else kind of makes it easy to fall for these people who do not have good intentions.
Unfortunately, yes. Did you ever felt that you had to explain something online to a parent or to an adult in general that they didn't really get it? And what was one thing or what's one thing that you wish more adults understood about your online world?
Hmm. I think apart from like the memes I sent my mom that she doesn't understand and all the trends that she doesn't understand, I think overall the concept of how, although it's a tool, like the online world, um, it can also be deceptively a tool in the sense of there are so many opportunities that you can find online, but it can be very overwhelming and it can also lead to like false things that you join that maybe not as great as you think. For example, what I'm trying to lead to is there are so many internships and things you can find online. And I think that, it's great that we're able to like access so much more, but at the same time, it can become overwhelming to, apply to so many things. And also it can be a bit hard to decipher whether an opportunity is real or not, unless it's backed up by, like, say, a huge college and they're offering something. That makes it easier to tell. But so many opportunities online, and I'm talking more on, advancing your career, or, if you're a
Mhm.
high schooler and you want to go into a field, trying to figure out how you can get into that field, things like that. Um, Oftentimes they may not be as beneficial to you, and it's very applicable to all things, not just job opportunities, but the things online are so vast that it oftentimes can be overwhelming, and it can prove to have like false promises that don't live up to your expectations. And although it's a tool, sometimes like it's a double-edged sword and you kind of get hurt as well.
That's so true. If a younger teen or somebody of your age comes to you and asks you how to stay safe online, especially when it comes to love, attention, or promises involved, what would you tell them?
I think it's such a fine line to, meddle with someone else's relationships, but sometimes it needs to be done and it can be a bit difficult to talk to somebody about it. Um, but it's almost like if your friend at school is talking to some people who are very toxic. And although it will
Mhm.
be awkward to go up and say like, hey, you need to cut those people off, it is necessary for their mental health and their well-being. And it is an awkward conversation and it's hard to do, but at the end of the day, it needs to be done to protect that person. And I would probably tell them that, hey, this may not be real, it may be fake. And I would also not get myself too involved into it because it could ruin our relationship. I would, advise my friend, be careful, look out for the signs, don't share enough information that they can, learn about you and access more information like your physical location or, where you are at, certain times, what your parents do for work. Make sure you're looking at what this person's doing from not an emotional side, but from like a detective, figuring out if this person is a criminal or not. But I also think it is important to note that at the end of the day, it's that person's job and responsibility to take care of themselves. And I can only, provide them with what I think. I can't really push them to do anything. And I think just by showing that I care, maybe they will take that in a good way. But I wouldn't think like pushing somebody to block or to report someone who they've clearly created a bond with.
Mm.
I think that would just create more issues on so many levels. And rather just warning them and making sure they know that you're there for them, I feel like that would help a little more.
That's very interesting. And while you were talking, I was smiling because I kind of had similar situation to that. I will not name the movie because I don't want to put anyone in a bad position, let's say. But I was watching a serial. I really like that serial, and I made the mistake, let's say, to like a few of the posts that were made about that serial. And suddenly, every actor that was playing in different roles in the serial, they start to private message me. And at some point, it was something, I felt something between, oh, they actually saw me, and is this real?
Mhm.
What I've done, I have a very open relationship with my husband, and we can actually talk a lot of things. So I went to him and I said to him, like, what do you think about these messages? He looked at them and he was like, I hate to break it to you, they're fake. I was like, damn, I'm not that same. It crushed me inside because I really wanted to be true, but in the same time, it opened my eyes and I was like, you know something? He's actually right because it happened after I like certain posts. So to everyone, be careful what you like because from there someone may gain interest into you. And it was because I was popular or pretty or whatever they tried to compliment me. It was because it was a big fat scam. I I later put my cybersecurity specialist hat, and I realized that what felt good at the beginning, it was totally opposite. So I can relate with what you just said because we are talking about boundaries. Do you have any boundaries on social media?
Um, for me, I think I just use it with my friends and people I know. Like I've been to school with them and, we know each other, we have a relationship with each other. Either we've gone to classes together or we went to summer camp together where I know and trust this person. And everybody else, I don't really entertain them or involve myself with them because I truly don't feel a need to. Not saying that I'll be rude to them, but I just don't find myself wanting to engage or keep up a conversation or continue texting them. If I already don't have a friendship with them, I don't see a reason to do that. And I think that has helped me not just to stay safe, where, people who I barely know are, I'm talking to them all the time, but also to manage my friendships and see who is genuinely there for me. If, I have these shallow conversations with people ongoing all the time, I find that it's not really meaningful. And, if you're caught off guard, you may give information you don't want to that person, and that just becomes more complicated. And I often find myself thinking like, would I share a picture of my outfit of that day? Would I feel comfortable doing that? Or even if I post on my story and I've added a new follower, I'll think about it like, would I be comfortable with them seeing a picture of my outfit of the day that if I post it, would I feel not judged? Would I feel safe? Would I feel validated by them being there and seeing it? And if the answer is no, then I don't see any reason to either have them as a follower, or to message them because clearly I don't feel safe with my physical presence with them. I shouldn't feel safe with my online presence. Um, and I think just having like that benchmark of where are you comfortable, where do you draw the line? For me, it's like, do I feel comfortable sharing a picture of me that day or me on like a vacation? Um, and that's what works for me. But for some people, maybe it's like, do you feel comfortable sharing your emotional state? Because I know some people post on their Instagram, if they're feeling sad or their wins in life. Would you feel comfortable with that person having that? And depending on the answer, that's kind of how I form my boundary. If I need to delve into that friendship or talk to them more, or not. And one more thing I want to touch up on is that concept of when you're texting someone, it is so fast. You can get caught off guard so easily. And if you're talking to someone you don't trust enough or you don't have that kind of bond with, it's so easy to slip out information or, talk about something that happened that could not only, make you embarrassed and not only be like a little awkward, but can also come back to you. That person could share it with their best friend and, they can take it to someone else and suddenly everybody knows your news. For example, if you share your grade and maybe you didn't do so good with a classmate who you don't really talk to, that person can easily just take it and share it with everyone else. And then suddenly everybody knows you got like a 30 out of 60 on your test. And you got to really think about it. Is that something you want them to know? But that's kind of how I place that benchmark and I draw the line and I create my boundaries online.
That's a very mature thinking. Did someone help you shape that thinking and those boundaries, or do you feel like that's something you've had to figure it on your own?
I think it was a combination of the two. I think my parents
Okay.
are very much like very closed with their personal information or even like my mom doesn't share when, she gets those wins in life. She shares it with her family, but she doesn't go to coworkers and say like, "Oh, this happened." For example, we recently bought a home. It's been a while, but it happened recently and it wasn't something that we went out and posted anywhere. It was just a win for our family, and we kept it like that. So things like that, my parents have done in their physical life, not really online, but specifically online, I think I have figured it out by myself, through, talking to people and realizing like, oh, I don't really want them to know that. It's kind of shaped that feeling of like, who do I really want to share my information with? Even if it's like what I've done for the day. It can be something so small, but just holding it on a pedestal and taking it seriously, everything that I say to people, and not taking it lightly, like, oh, they won't do anything with it. But it's kind of been like personal experience as well, where I realized like, oh, I don't really need to share how my day went with this person, or I don't really need to text them if they're not texting me. Things like that have made me realize like, I don't really need to do this, so I shouldn't. There's no need to. So yeah.
It it makes me think at the power of example. So your parents, even though they are not, probably they are not as much into online, they did show you that the greatest news or the saddest news, they should be kept in a very close circle, so that transfer into online, which obviously transfer back to um, physical life. So it's kind of a 360 circle, if that makes sense, which is very, very, very beautiful and amazing to see, because this is how you shape an adult, a young person to become a very responsible adult. So congratulations to your parents. My next question will be, how common it is for people of your age to actually talk about online danger like manipulation, pressure, or people pretending to be someone else? Do they seek advice?
I think again it's kind of like yes and no, they're like two sides. People do talk about like the scams that you see or Um, sometimes like they bring up the things that you see online that may be false. Like if some influencer posted something and it's so clearly like fake. Sometimes people do talk about it in a very light manner where it's like, oh, did you see that video? It went viral. Everyone's like making fun of the person because they faked whatever. Like we talk about it more in a gossip sense. But I think that there is that issue where, and this ties back to the validation and, constantly feeling like it's a popularity contest. People don't talk about the stereotypes and the like standard that people hold each other and the need to get those likes. And those personal dilemmas that people may have about what they post or, posting something and then not feeling good about yourself. All of those emotional side effects that closely impact you. I don't think that those are talked about enough. And I think that, we as teens should be more open about the issues that are happening online. For example, like there's so many people out there who get insecure about seeing other people, and then they look at their own story that they posted, or they look at what they've posted, and they suddenly feel bad about themselves. I don't think that's talked about enough, and that, neglectance of talking about it actually fuels it even more because we're not saying it's wrong. We're just continuing life on, and we're just like approving of it. So I think that aspect should be touched up more, and it takes a social change and it takes time and it takes effort. It is hard to say like you are having an issue or you are insecure based on what you see or you think that you're getting like hurt by your online presence. um and I think we need to be brave and someone needs to step up and talk about it, so creating that safe space becomes the norm.
I understand. How? Because we are keep talking about the dangers and all of these um, things that people talk but not talk. How literate you would say your generation is, not specifically in using the tech, but in spotting something that's not quite right. As I mentioned before, if somebody try to sugar them up, let's say.
I think we have gotten quite good at it. I think um it's talked about more. And I think it's brought up more that like those scams are real. Because the implications of those are very much affecting your physical life as well. And for example, like scams, those affect either, the money in your bank account, your personal information, things that we hold on a high regard. And I think those are talked about more. And so people are able to recognize it more often because there's more awareness about it and more people talk about it and are aware of it. And specifically for when people try to create false relationships, or try to like sugar someone up just to get information or to use and manipulate the person. I think that's a little more on the taboo side of
Mhm.
our society, where again you're talking about someone else's feelings and you're talking about, someone's need for validation. That's just innate in all of us. And that becomes a little more touchy. And I think people are not talking about it enough because there are still cases and people are still falling for those traps. And that, yeah, that is still a prominent issue. And I think if we were to talk about it more and be more open about what is happening, it would reduce the amount of people who are falling for that.
That's an interesting answer. And I was looking at my next question, but I would like to give you a bit of more. It's somehow tied to what you just answered, but I want to give you a bit of a context so you can understand where I'm hinting with the question. Back in October 2024, it was a very scandalous, if you like, case. I will not give the name, but I will tell you this. The young person was creating a huge amount of fake accounts, pretending to be a girl, exploring her sexuality. And this was the way he catfished a lot of people. At some point in the investigation, I think one of the detectives involved in the case, he made a public statement where he said that they confirm at least 3,000 children being victims, and they think the number is even more. So that was the biggest number in a UK investigation. Now, because he was pretending to be a girl, and what he would do, he would take the pictures of the victim, the previous victim, show it to the next victim. Now, this is the context, and the question is, do you think these kind of things makes teens more vulnerable to that kind of attention? Specifically, if you're somebody who wants attention or seek attention, do you think this kind of impersonation will make them feel more vulnerable into falling in the trap?
I think this connects back to the idea of how we've set such high standards. Especially in your online presence, you need to show only the best moments, you need to have the best things, and that's all. And the way that this connects to what you've given in the sense of the context is the victims have probably felt that they need the best in terms of what they're getting, no matter what it is. And when you see someone offering it to you, they just snatch at it because there's that standard to, always know everything and get everything. And it is really hard to be vulnerable online and be raw and real just because of the way that people pick apart other people. And I think that seeking of that validation ties to that standard. You want to be accepted. You want to be you want to be regarded as fitting the standard that we've set so high, and it's become this game of like, how fast can I get it? How easily can I get it? Because I need it right now. And that comes with like, portraying yourself online, adding filters when in reality you're beautiful. You do not need it, but you need to achieve that standard so fast. And I think that applies to this as well, where, you need that validation immediately. And if someone is messaging you and giving you a clear opening to get some validation, you're just taking it. And you're kind of on that like dopamine high where you're getting this happiness, quote unquote, happiness from
Mm-hmm.
someone. You're getting this validation. I know I keep saying that word, but you're um, being
That's
affirmed
true.
by somebody. And that means so much. We put that at such a high standard that your people are willing to do whatever. And unfortunately, people are willing to abuse that need. And I think we don't take it as seriously either. If you were to talk about drugs and you were to say that someone has a drug addiction, we would take it so much more seriously compared to someone who is seeking validation from others and going to an extent like this, where they're disregarding their safety. for that. It's not because they don't like themselves and they don't want their safety. It is because they want that validation, and we have set that standard and they're falling for that. So it is neither the victim's fault nor the society's fault because we're all kind of trapped in this entanglement, and it's really, really hard to pick it apart. But in that process, like when you have yarn all tangled up, we're pulling one end and we're tightening it instead of loosening it. And I think that's what's happening.
I understand. Just as a continuation, because I liked so much what you said, I want to add something. I was talking to someone who survived grooming in the in the perspective of sexual pornography, like heavily. And I asked him the same thing, and he was like, it's very hard to fully understand where you're starting to being groomed or approached in that perspective, because behind the screen it's another complex person just as me and you. So it's always hard, it's always unexpected, and it's always hard to understand what the other person actually has in mind. Yes, there are some patterns. Yes, there are some red flags that you can recognize. But at the end of the day, even on the other end, there is a complex person just like me and you.
Mhm.
As we are getting close to finishing the podcast, I still have two questions for you. One of them is, what's one small thing schools or parents could do that would actually make you feel more supported online, not just monitored?
Mm. I think that's a really good question, and that really ties into what Cyber for Youth does. And basically, what we do is instead of like monitoring their online presence, it's more of just creating a safe space for your kid to be able to run to in case something happens. And then this is kind of like diverging into another topic, but kind of connects to your physical like life, where your parents aren't like constantly looking over your shoulder when you're talking to your friends at school. There's no reason to be doing that. But at the end of the day, if something happens, if a friendship goes south, or if someone's being mean to you, you should be able to go home, or you should be able to go to the school and say,
Yes.
you're being bullied. You should be feel safe. And I think it is very hard to cross that line of, independence at the same time making sure they're safe. But the one thing that you can do, no matter how your family works or no matter how the school system works, no matter what rules or morals that you guys follow, one thing is creating that safe space, because if something happens and you can do as much as you want, something may happen. And when that does, just having that safe space where you're not going to be judged and you're going to be taken care of, that is the most important thing. So that victim or the child or whatever, no matter what happens, they're emotionally protected, and that affects your long term, so that you are able to sustain on your own when something happens when you're a lot older, and you're also able to not get traumatized almost by your online safety, because at the end of the day, the online world is here to stay. There's no way it's going to leave tomorrow. And what we need to do is make sure you feel safe and you're secure online rather than being scared and vulnerable. So just creating a safe space, whether that be um, a way that you can have an anonymous form for schools where you can submit something. So, you have that safety of your identity being protected. Um, or at home, knowing that, when you talk to your parents seriously and, you're not complaining or whining, you're like sitting down with them and showing something that they're going to take you into their arms and not worry about it, but just protect you. Just having that safe space is so important no matter what rules you follow. At the end of the day, if something does happen, and it might, those rules won't protect you. It's that emotional connection and that safety that will.
I understand. And finally, what gives you hope about your generation and how you're navigating digital life?
I think that my generation, um, from my view, I think we're getting faster at calling out things, and I think we're
Okay.
not being scared of calling out things, because like I mentioned before, there is that need of validation and that need of like being nice to everybody. But now I think that we've started to catch on to the false promises and the like the fakeness of everything. And we've started to value the real friendships and the real relationships and realize that those likes don't mean a lot and popularity is not everything in life. And that makes it easier for people to catch on to fake scams or messages that are being sent because our attention is not on it anymore and we are focusing on other things that we know are important to us. um, but I think, I mean, again, there's so much we could work on, and that all is also what I see. There is obviously a different world for everyone's algorithms, what everyone is looking at, but we're more accepting online, and more aware. I feel like that's what the growth has been so far, and I hope it just continues to be in that way where we're able to call out AI, and fake things really easily. And I think that's become our training to be able to call out fake things in general.
That's such a promising hope. That is. Samita, I would like to thank you so much for your honesty and insight. Your voice is a reminder that young people aren't just users, they are thinkers, decision makers, and sometimes they are the first to spot danger. To all our listeners, we hope this episode gives you insight and tools to help guide young people towards ethical digital path. And don't forget to subscribe and join us for more conversation that keeps our online spaces secure. Stay safe and stay informed. Bye bye.